All right, the chair is running a little late, so I'm going to kick this off for our work session today on October 19th, 2021. To start off, please rise and join me for the invocation led by Bishop Lawrence Livingston of the Eternity Temple Firstborn Church of the Living God.
Good morning. Good morning, Father. Good morning, our Savior and our Sustainer. We give thanks to you, O God, for being invited into the presence of our county commissioners and Administrator Hope and the other key leaders. We stand to give thanks. We make petitions to you for mercy and grace, and we beg your forgiveness for our sins and the sins of our nations. Oh, Father, we thank you for your gift of life in the midst of COVID-19, to be able to acknowledge that you redeemed us by your Son's precious sacrifice. You have blessed our community so richly through the ongoing work of these commissioners. Therefore, we give thanks that you alone, Father, give the gift of wisdom and patience that shall always be quick to help and sympathize and slow to hurt and criticize. Finally, we ask these petitions in the matchless name of our Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing for the pledge led by Commissioner Reggie Bellamy.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I will turn this over to County Administrator Scott Hopes to begin talking about redistricting of the county districts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, this is our second session on redistricting to update you on what has occurred since our first meeting. The United States Census Bureau has released the redistricting census for 2020. We have subscribed to the Redistricting Tool on Esri, which is our GIS platform, and we have retained a consultant, Mr. John Guthrie, in Tallahassee as the independent redistricting consultant for the commission. And he is joining us by Zoom this morning. A copy of the purchase order was distributed to each of you and was also in the packet for this morning's work session on redistricting. How I'd like to go ahead and start off is go ahead and introduce you to John Guthrie, the consultant, who will pop up on Zoom. There he is. And he'll do both an introduction of himself and give you an idea of his background, and then recommendations regarding process. As you know, we, as well as the rest of the country, are getting
I do not have an audio connection to the meeting.
We hear you.
I'm going to try to work on that technical problem.
Okay. Are you able to hear me? John, are you able to hear me? Okay, he'll work on that. While he's working on that, as I mentioned. Oh. I'm probably coming through his connection. Where is? Whoa. Hello? Hello?
This is John Guthrie. I did not hear audio from the room earlier, but I do hear it now.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Okay, John, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Hopes. I appreciate this opportunity to join you online this morning. I was contracted, I contracted with Manatee County last week. It's a contract to provide redistricting services to the county for the purposes of creating your county commission and school, and it may be expanded to include school board districts as well. I have had a couple conversations with Dr. Hopes. We are just getting started with the work. The application that I plan to use for modeling districts in Manatee County is Esri Redistricting. That is a GIS program that is very familiar to the county staff there. Mark Murphy and his team are the ones who provisioned the license for me to use with this project. I did just a little bit of work last week where using the Esri Redistricting application, I very easily imported the existing districts into the software and was able to see what the population demographics were of the current districts using the 2020 census. What we see is what I think you already know, that the population in Manatee has grown mostly in the east. What that means is that in order to equalize population, the districts in the western portion of the county, District 2, District 2, District 3, and District 4 will need to gain population by expanding toward the east. The 3 districts in the west will need to grow toward the east. Dr. Hopes and I have talked about a format where I will take my direction from him. That model will give me the independence that I think is recommended for being able to come up with a redistricting plan based on the state constitution, based on state law, and based on the policy parameters that are articulated by the commission, and will result in a redistricting plan that will be very sustainable and defensible for elections in the decade ahead. My background is that I was the staff director of redistricting for the Florida Senate from 1989 until I retired in 2015. So I was the lead staff person in the Florida Senate during the redistricting in the 1990s, the 2000s, and the decade of 2010. I learned an awful lot. It's a area of technology and of law that I enjoy working in, and I'm happy to bring my talent and my knowledge of redistricting to the important work that we will be doing with Manatee County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you aboard. Recess.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I wanted to go ahead and, for those of you that may have come in later, we've got two of our extraordinary GIS professionals that are with us, Mark Murphy and Priscilla Tong. Get it right? All right. And they have been doing the preliminary work getting our GIS system set up and getting the redistricting tool activated. What I want to do just for a brief moment is I want to show you the maps that we all took a stab at drawing. And I want to clarify some misinformation that's out there. There were a number of people that felt these were maps in honest for redistricting, and it's not what it was for. My attempt at drawing lines, which is was just based on things that I had been hearing in the months leading up to the census being released about how each of you sort of envisioned your future districts looking without looking at any demographic data, without looking at any population data, just drew the lines, gave them to the GIS folks, and they came up with those maps, which clearly showed that I had no idea the density of the population, the magnitude of the growth of the population, and you see that in the disparity among the districts. Likewise, if we go through the ones that you attempted, if you recall the exercise, which was merely intended to be an exercise to demonstrate some of the challenges in just thinking through geography. Even though most of us drive the county frequently, we see where the houses are. Until you get into the analytics with the GIS software, you really don't know how close or how far you are from getting equitable populations. So if we click through these sort of rapidly. So this was my attempt based on feedback that I had gotten from you. Then we'll go to Mr. Bellamy's. Is Mr. Bellamy's next? And you have the hard copy. It takes a little while to draw it. And I want to say, I believe the commissioner that came closest to the target population for their own district on their own map was Commissioner Van Ostenbridge. Many of you said it really wasn't Commissioner Van Ostenbridge because he had a surrogate, as if that surrogate was an expert drawing the lines. Therein lies the challenges of us using sort of pen and paper and drawing lines without the benefit of the analytics and the demographics. So if we could, let's go ahead and put up the, rather than wait for it to draw, why don't we go ahead and put up the current district lines with the 2020 redistricting data from the census.
Hope something. So what we just got was what we drew, and
Right.
this means
And we had it
nothing.
digitized. So
Thank you.
if you
Just-
remember, we had the
yeah,
big maps
right,
on the
right.
wall,
Just so the
and you
public
all
knows.
went around and drew lines. So for those in the public, the exercise was each commissioner had a base map to redraw their district the way they envisioned it. And then each commissioner rotated and drew their district on their colleagues' base map until all the base maps were populated with the district for the commissioner of that district first drawing their envisioned line, and then the other commissioners drawing how they envisioned their line based on the commissioner in that district for that base map. And then that was given to the GIS folks. They took the hand drawings and then put it in the GIS system and then ran the numbers. And so when you see, some of you got pretty close because you're looking for less than a 10% variance, but none of the maps resulted in adequately shifting the population across all 5 districts. So what I'd like to do at this time is either one of our GIS folks or John to explain the redistricting software so you can see how it operates and how it recalculates and how it tests and verifies whether or not the lines are meeting the conditions that are set forth in the system, in essence, to be in compliance with the various rules and regulations.
No, just a statement based on the last introductory exercise. From what I understand, that has nothing to do with what the consultant will bring forward. It'll be total different software and things like that. Am I correct?
That is correct. When your hand drawings were put in the mapping software, we did not have the redistricting tool that is specific for this purpose for drawing districts, nor did we have the 2020 redistricting census data from the federal government.
Okay.
It was truly an exercise.
Right. It came up, and I just wanted to, put on the record that was an introductory exercise, so we could be a little bit more familiar with it. I think the thing that has changed, we have the consultant now, and we're anticipating some guidance and some direction from him.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct. Thank you. All right. Who would like to take a stab at running through the demo of the redistricting tool?
I can do that. Everybody can hear me or not? Into the microphone, please. Yeah, welcome to our world. Like that? Can everybody hear me? Can everybody hear me now? Okay.
You actually can't control it. Yeah, you can bring it to you.
How's that? Everybody can hear me. Okay.
We had more people shouting instructions.
So this is the redistricting tool that you're seeing here. What we did is we took the commissioner districts as they were from 2010 census, and we put them in here to see, what did we get out of it. And there is a review in here where you do a check integrity, and it goes through a whole bunch of different things. Population, and there's a maximum deviation that you can set. It's set to 10%. And what you try to do is basically get to 0. Nobody's ever going to get to 0, but as long as you're within that maximum deviation, you're okay. So these were fine. We went through all of our integrity checks. Everything was fine. Now, when we bring up Dr. Hope's.
Bring up mine.
Yes, we'll bring up yours. It's this one. Now, when we go through here, it also gives you a table, and it tells you like what your target deviation. Your target deviation is 0, but obviously, we're off here, especially like in here, because when we run our integrity checks, it's going to come and it's going to tell us that we have a problem here. So if you look at the details, it's going to say, this is the allowable deviation. This is the deviation. So these 3 are way off, is basically what it's telling you. And what you can do then is you can go through and you can change the districts within here, and it'll tell you as you're going, okay, I'm getting closer on this one, I'm moving this to here, that kind of thing. And this overall range check basically tells you the same thing. It's telling you what your target should be and what it is, and basically what you have to do is go through here and play with it to figure out, like, okay, we take some from you, we give them some to you, we get, back and forth. Some of mine. Right. Okay. And that's basically what we have. So all of ours, this was Dr. Hope's. His came a little closer, but then we have, I did each of the ones that you all drew up. And we went through them, and so this is Commissioner Satcher's. And again, we'll run the integrity check. Yeah, and again, we can see that, we're off, and everybody's off here, pretty much. So this one, okay, we're going to have to play with this a little bit to try and figure out. But this is basically what the tool does. I don't know if you want me to go through every one of them.
Oh, if you went through one, you should go through that.
Okay.
I've got these pulled up.
I know, right? And we did this with a piece of crayon, not with software or anything like that. It was just.
I think we're fine. I think we're fine.
Got the
You want to see yours?
yeah, I got
Yeah,
these.
it's in here.
Roll through those if you like.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. We took these maps, the printed maps.
Right.
And we took the information from there, and if it's going to reach.
So let me flip.
Whoop.
And which ones are those?
Yes,
Mark.
These are,
It takes a second. There you go.
there we go. Yeah, so these are what you guys got.
Ah, I see. Right.
So,
And we basically took the numbers that came out of this redistricting tool to create that table that is in each of the maps.
Right. So
when we symbolized the map, we tried to show the deviation, how much you were off. So that's what the little gray bar represents.
Right.
okay. Let me just ask Mr. Guthrie if he wants to add anything to the tool presentation. Mr. Guthrie, you with us?
Yeah, very good. And thank you, Priscilla, for showing that. So that I think you get the idea there that what the GIS system does is give you an easy way of visualizing the map and the associated demographics. And the demographic information that comes packaged with the program is from the 2020 census. They also will allow you to look back at the 2010 or the 2000 census, but we will be focusing just on the current population, the 2020 population. And the requirement under the state constitution is that we do our county redistricting based on the most recent decennial census and equalize the population. The Census Bureau also provides racial and ethnic population counts or percentages, and that will be in the tables that you see for the plans that the commission later may consider for redistricting. So in addition to knowing the total population, you will have the voting age population and the voting age population broken down by racial categories and by persons who are of Hispanic origin. But the software, I think Priscilla showed you, it's easy enough to take, put lines on a map and then immediately get your feedback about what the demographics of those territories, those districts on your map will be.
We have a couple of commissioners with questions for you. Commissioner Van Ostenbridge, then Commissioner Serbia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here, Mr. Guthrie. This is pretty insightful so far. When we had our first workshop on this, COVID-19 had given me an opportunity to have some downtime at home. And so I actually, out of pure, boredom and cabin fever, started going online and digging into this. And it's all coming back to me what I had learned at that time. I thought that I read that we were not allowed specifically to take party affiliation, race, religion, and age, those sort of demographics into consideration when we drew the lines. Did I misunderstand that? I thought I read that explicitly.
So the Florida Constitution was modified prior to the redistricting in 2011 and 2012. The new constitutional provisions say that for state legislative redistricting and for congressional redistricting, districts may not be drawn in a manner that favors or disfavors an incumbent or a political party. But that language does not apply to county commission districts currently under Florida law.
Okay, that's fairly vague. My next, which, I mean, you didn't write the law, obviously, you're just reciting it, but it's fairly vague. But lawyers tend to do that. No offense, Mr. Clegg.
Mr. Clegg, did you want to respond to that?
Well, I had another question, Madam Chair. So then my other question is, I know that, for instance, at the state level, they have the ability to actually draw an incumbent out of their seat. And I don't believe again, from what I read, but apparently I'm wrong so far, but I don't believe that at the county commission level, we are able to draw an incumbent out of their seat. But is that the case with the county commission and with the school board? Because if it is, and we're attempting to, coordinate here, you're talking about 8 people. Sorry, no, we have 7, and they have what? 7. And what do they have? They have 5. Okay, so you're talking about 12 people. So we're trying to sort out where all these 12 people live. True, I guess 2 of them don't matter. So 10, we're down to 10. So this is improving. So we're still talking about where 10 people live in the county. So I guess my question is that, are you not able to draw a school board member or a county commissioner out of their district?
Mr. Guthrie, did you want to answer that, sir?
Yeah, that is not my reading of the law. The residents of the county commissioners will be prospective. So in future elections, I think there is a provision that if we do redistricting in 2021 and a commissioner was elected in 2000 to a 4-year term, that commissioner will be able to serve out the balance of that commissioner's term. Does that get at your question?
It does. Like they will continue to, because I had also read that the law stated that as a county commissioner, basically during the course of your term, you must reside in your district. So this would create a loophole for that. But you're saying we can draw people out. That's fantastic news. There's a couple of people on here I'm going to draw out right away. No, I'm just teasing. But the only reason it concerned me is because I noticed that there were a couple of people who lived near sort of the border, right? And it was actually school board people, not county commissioners. So that was what made me sort of concerned about that, is if the district moved hardly at all, that could be a problem for those folks. Anyway, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clegg now says no. Commissioner Servia and then Commissioner Bellamy.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Very, very interesting and cool software. Love the software, Mr. Guthrie. So let me ask you a couple of questions. We know, and the census knows, that many people were undercounted, and most of those people lie in districts 4 and 2, is assumed, based on historical reasoning. Does that come into play at all when we're redrawing these boundaries, or do we just solidly go by the census data, period?
Good question.
So the county would be allowed under law to use a basis of population other than the 2020 census. But if you were to do so, the burden would be on the county to show that your block level population counts were accurate, were in fact a improvement over what was determined by the 2020 census. So that would be a rather high bar for any government to meet, that you have had a better way of counting the population than the Census Bureau did. So we know that there was undercount. We know that there was overcount, but getting those numbers at the block level, or the level that you would need for redistricting, would be very, very challenging.
Okay. Because, for example, I know the Bieber standards, which are a well-respected demographic standard at the University of Florida, differ from the census. But what I've heard is we may be able to use those, but it would be difficult. Okay. The 10% deviation standard that you speak of, is that a guiding factor or is that law?
It's a guiding factor.
I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding is that is federal case law. The genesis of that was that the U.S. Supreme Court, in interpreting the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, has said that congressional districts must be as nearly equal in population as practicable. And in fact, what Florida and other states have done is take that population deviation literally down to a single person, that basically no deviation whatsoever in order to get safe harbor. The four legislative districts or for local county commission, school board, other city commission districts, the Supreme Court has put in its opinions that deviations as high as 10% might be acceptable if they are based on some compelling governmental interest. So if there's a compelling governmental interest to have deviations in the population, and that's explicit, then deviations are allowed. But in no case have state or local governments been held to getting exactly equal population among the districts. So
Okay.
10% is a rule of thumb, and while it's not entirely safe harbor, if you have your deviations less than 10%, generally that will withstand a lawsuit.
Okay, and what I'm hearing is over 10% would be problematic, but 10% or less is the goal
I believe that's correct, yes.
of each district, is what I understand. And my last question is accounting for future growth. So we're adding 10,000 new people plus or minus every year. And we know pretty much where that growth is occurring. And since we only do this once every 10 years, does it make sense to, create districts that will be valid for more than 1 year?
So my opinion, again, not as a lawyer, would be that if the commission chose to consider future growth in the county, and was to underpopulate the districts in the east in order to anticipate that future growth. And that was done consistently for the whole county. If you had a rational basis for making that decision, then that would be a defensible choice for the county to make.
Commissioner Bellamy?
Yeah, I'll probably have a few more questions as we go through, but put the cart before the horse. When we start talking about the software that we're utilizing, will we have access to the software? Will the public have access to the software? And will there be guidelines as far as how to utilize the software so we can make sure everything that's being done is clear and it's in front of the public?
And Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think the best approach would be, because each user, it's $4,500.
But
So I would say the commissioners could access the GIS folks and work on lines. We can come up with a process as far as, like, the legislature. I know in the past the legislature has made a tool available to the public. We don't have a license that allows us to make the tool available to the public. Each user, the fee for the redistricting tool is $4,500.
So to me, the public is blind. And what I mean by that, if we have a consultant that's working on our behalf and the software is not accessible to the public, then how are they going to be able to view, how are they going to be able to learn as far as what's actually taking place? You know, I fielded some questions this weekend about the actual process, and my expectations was be able to have access to the consultant. When we went through the introduction exercise, it was very, very clear this was foreign to a lot of us. And we're actually asking or seeking the consultant, you know, guidance to make sure things are going in a direction that's favorable for all. So when I asked that question, I understand about the license and things like that, but how do we plan on making sure, outside of this process right here, how do we plan on making sure that the public has access, and then if they take and utilize a software or something very similar and questions come up, we can make sure we have that communication back to the consultant. I think that's very important as we navigate our way through this process.
May I kind of go from what he just brought up? Is it possible that any maps or anything that we're looking at, we can put them on our website so that the public can see them there? I mean, I think it's a good question that we need to explore, and the question is how to go about that. So, Dr. Hopes, did you want to respond
Yeah,
to
I
him?
think with regards to transparency to the public, as we've done, every map that has been drawn, we've made available to the public through publication on the website. And so I think that is a reasonable process. So as a map gets drawn for consideration or for discussion, we can have a redistricting page on the website so that a redistricting page on the website so that the public can go and see this work as it progresses, because it's going to have to go pretty quick. Remember, we need to bring forward, after 2 public hearings, a final redistricting map for your consideration for approval at the December 13th meeting so that it can be submitted to the state. Because this is required, according to state statutes, to be done during an odd year. That odd year ends at December 31st. With regards to public input, one approach, but of course it's up to you, one approach is if you have constituents that would like to see what the demographics would be based on certain lines, one approach would be they go through their commissioner, their district commissioner, or one of the at-large commissioners to share that information with us to get to staff so that they can digitize it in the software and produce a map based on whatever input they have. Is one approach, but we're certainly open for suggestions. Madam Chair.
Commissioner Bellamy?
Yeah, I was, yeah.
Okay.
And thank you. I think that's going to be very, very important for us to identify a process on how that would take place. And also think, you know, with this being the first one with the consultant being involved, hopefully we can have at least one more workshop outside of the public hearings, because once we are introduced to the software and the process on how things, we have to go back and navigate through it. I initially asked the question, would we have the ability to meet with the consultant? As far as the commissioners, can the consult? I have your answer. I want to hear from the consultant. Mr. Guthrie, well, yeah. Can I hear from the consultant?
Thank you, Commissioner Bellamy. Thank you, Madam Chair. The conversations that I've had with Dr. Hopes is that in order to make this process as orderly and as quick as possible, and also to sort of guarantee the independence of the consulting advice that I am giving to the county commissioners, that it would be valuable to have the chain of communication to me be through Dr. Hopes, so that he would take your input and provide it to me. Now, that is not a legal requirement. It's just an approach that Dr. Hopes and I have talked about as a way of guaranteeing the independence of the consultant and the transparency of the process, so that neither the public nor commissioners would need to be concerned that there were
Quiet, please.
backroom communications.
So unfortunately, either I was misunderstood, or I was misled. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I was told that it would be contractually in this information right here that we would not be able to meet with you one-on-one. Now you're basically saying that it's a filtering process. The way I understood it, that it was your preference not to have individual meetings with us. This is a very, very, very sensitive. This is a very sensitive issue for the underserved and the people that are in District 2. And I think access is going to be, and everybody else involved too. I think access to you is going to be very, very important. I'm concerned on how the wording of that has taken place, because that's why I asked that question, because I think it's very important for the public to have input. I think it's very important for us to be able to have access to you. Now, if it's through the county administrator, he already have, meetings out. I mean, we had a drive around that it took us a month and a half to reschedule. I think this is a little bit more of a priority, and I want to make sure that we have the ability, if individuals, and I say this publicly regardless of who you are, if individuals from the public feel like they want to have a conversation, we would have to strategically set up that meeting, and it has to be compatible to the county administrator's schedule and your schedule, so we can have access. That seems like we're almost, jumping over hurdles all of a sudden, and I want to make sure that in the workshop we find ways to navigate through that so we avoid that.
Are you finished, Commissioner Bellamy?
Right now, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Cruz, then Commissioner Serbia.
All right. I got three things. Two is more just a question for the consultant or for Dr. Hopes. The third is a comment to what Commissioner Bellamy just said. Yeah, when we discussed hiring a consultant, I believe it was me who specifically said it wasn't the administrator hiring a consultant, it was the Board of County Commissioners hiring the consultant. The Board of County Commissioners is supposed to draw the maps. I think, a potential solution in an expedited manner is any commissioner here, every commissioner here, can hold a town hall to discuss it with their constituents at their own time and place. And then if every commissioner is given an opportunity to sit on a Zoom with this commissioner and have Mr. Guthrie help draw a map as we see it should be drawn and make sure it conforms and so forth, that we have some maps to look at. I think it, that's one way of handling it. But my questions are two things. One, you're kind of implying we don't have to draw people into their districts, but in all honesty, I don't think anyone here wants to, or the school board for that matter, wants to draw anybody out of their district. I mean, this is a small town. That's not the game we want to play. So we got to work within the framework of where people live and make sure that they're staying within the districts that they're currently registering. But there's been a lot of talk about our school board district maps matching our county, but that's not required. It's convenient. We all prefer it, but we do have a situation, and particular, the most glaring one is District 5, because you and Reverend Golden live pretty far apart from each other.
Nowhere near each other.
So that's going to be very difficult to draw both of them into the same district. So, that would either be a complete mangling of our maps or an agreement they're going to be different. But I just want to confirm, you can redistrict more often than every 10 years, correct? You're not required to wait for these censuses to do it. I mean, Sarasota redistricts every 30 days. We can draw them separately and then all kind of agree, us and the school board, that as soon as feasibly possible, we would look to matching the maps, correct? They can be done more than every 10 years?
If that question is to me and I'm recognized to respond,
Yes, sir.
Yes, there is not, the requirement under the state constitution is that redistricting be done after the decennial census. It does not say that that's the only time. it
Okay,
can be
I just
done.
want to make sure people understand that there could be a situation due to logistics where they're not going to match up this particular year as much as we'd all like to, both from a cost standpoint and a time standpoint, but that doesn't mean we can't rematch them up sometime in the future. My second question is, we were talking about what constitutes different pockets of, whether it's religion or race or ethnicity, that can be focused on or not focused on. Are we allowed to consider just like-minded type views? Like for instance, I'll use that as an example because it's one that came up for a few people in Mayaca, but clearly they don't have the people to have their own district in Mayaca. But I'd prefer, honestly, and it all conforms again to my previous statement of where Commissioner Satcher lives, but I prefer to see an East-West District 1 over there and have an entire rural district that has like-minded people that are all focusing on the FDAB line and agriculture and things of that nature together, as opposed to lumping, Parish in with Terracea and lumping Mayaca in with Lakewood Ranch. I just think it gives better representation. Are we allowed to consider outside things of that nature, or are we just supposed to move lines arbitrarily?
I think it's a great idea.
To respond, one of the traditional redistricting principles that has been sanctioned by courts, by case law for jurisdictions to use in redistricting is what they call communities of interest. And that can be as broad as you want it to be. So it might be agrarian, it may be conservation voters, it might be persons of a particular ethnic or national background. So it is those are legitimate traditional principles that may be used for the purpose considered in the drawing of district boundaries.
Okay, well, I mean, this is a non-voting thing, but I'll just put my 2 cents in that would be my preference, to see an East-West District 1 conforming with where Commissioner Satcher lives and try to put all of our rural area in one place for better representation. If anything, that actually pushes District 5 further west, which may actually work with the school board maps, actually.
You're going to love my map, just saying. Mr. Clegg, did you want to add anything at this point before we go to?
Commissioners were done.
Okay.
I can do it now. I'd rather just defer to the commission.
Okay, Commissioner Survey and then Commissioner Whitmore.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chairman, and I appreciate the great conversation. So I do have a few questions. Dr. Hopes, do we have dates for the 2 hearings before December the 13th scheduled yet?
They're not scheduled yet, but I don't know if Diane's here. We did discuss the 2 dates, one being in November and one being early December for the public hearings.
Okay.
With regards to work sessions, because of the timing, I think my latest conversation with Mr. Guthrie was that he would have a set of maps to recommend for consideration within about 3 weeks. So the thinking is that, and he got access to the software late last week, and so we're probably looking about 2 weeks out. So we have work sessions scheduled, and we are prepared to bump other issues so that we can have the work sessions on the maps, mostly between now and about the middle of November.
Okay, and so if Mr. Guthrie will only meet with you, do I understand that you will only meet with commissioners on this topic, or are you going to meet with the public and anyone who wants to meet with you?
I principally work for the 7 of you, and I will tell you, when we first sought an independent consultant, it was actually my vision that I would be as far removed from it, with the exception of contract management, as possible. Because it puts me at great risk to be that individual. But when we spoke about it, and keep in mind, Mr. Guthrie's been doing this in the legislature since the 80s. He's had many opportunities to get called on the witness stand. And it was his discussion with me about independence and the preference, should he be called, which is likely based on, how things go. You remember how Sarasota went. To be a witness, his preference would be that he was not biased or persuaded by any one of you individually, that he was approaching it from an independent perspective, ensuring that these lines were drawn based on the law, the Constitution, et cetera. I can assure you that whatever you want the consultant to do or any questions you have, I will not filter it. It's my goal to provide each of you with the resources that you need in order to make a decision on the district boundaries. And so, but that being said, this is your board. You can decide what process you wanted to follow. But in order to get this done in the period of time, normally we would have started this in probably March, April. And because of the delay in getting the census data out, we're just in a different timetable here. And to try to figure out how to most efficiently and, more importantly, effectively use the consultant so that he can do the work that he needs to do in order to provide you with the best recommendation he can make. That was a process he came up with, wanting to maintain the independence. Many of you probably have consultants that you talk with that do this, on the political side, et cetera. This is supposed to be an independent consultant serving the needs of the board, regardless of whether or not you individually have access to a personal consultant or a campaign consultant for district lines.
Okay, so just my opinion in hearing that is, I think, it may be best if all work is done in a workshop or public hearing setting, so that it's transparent and available for everyone to understand what's happening. I think that protects you very well, Dr. Hopes, by keeping you out of it. It protects our consultant and the integrity of drawing the lines. Otherwise, I just think whether they're valid or not, there are going to be criticisms of backroom deals, and we want to avoid that at all costs. So I would like to see that all work is done in the public. And I also, I wrote about this a month ago, I would like to suggest that each of the 5 district commissioners appoint a citizen, and I want to say citizen because I don't mean a business owner, a citizen who's interested in this topic. Maybe it's a citizen in my district, might be from Bayshore, that wants to make sure all of Bayshore stays together, just an example. But a citizen, 5 citizens to work with Mr. Guthrie. And if that's not possible, maybe that group of people could work with you, Dr. Hopes, and you could relay the information to Dr. Guthrie. But I just think although we're on a short timeline, I think it's very, very important. Transparency is always important, but I can't think of a reason where it's more important than it is with this topic. As for the software being very expensive, I do understand that. And I just want to say to the public that anyone is welcome to come into my office and use my software. Anyone, whether you're in District 4 or not. All you got to do is set up a meeting, and you can come use it, unless there's some reason we can't allow that. But
You just said it out loud.
well, unless there's a legal reason, we can't, that I'm not aware of.
My guess is it's an individual license, not a desktop license, and the fact you just announced anyone can use your license would probably put us at risk of getting charged for it.
Okay, so Okay, then, maybe there's a way that we could buy a group license of some way to, okay, all right. Well, if that's not possible, then I go back to everything's got to be done in the public, in the sunshine. I think that's a reasonable expectation. Thank you.
Commissioner Whitmore, and then Commissioner Van Ostenbridge, and then Commissioner Bellamy.
We're on a time frame. We've known this is coming. There's various issues with us talking with the consultant, all of us talking individually, because then you're putting the consultant in the middle of being political, and it's supposed to be data-driven, if I'm not mistaken, correct? And like you said, this gentleman testifies in court, and he has to say that he wasn't influenced by anybody. I was actually probably the only one here when we redistrict before, and we didn't have the software, and our staff had to do it. I remember Karen Wyndham was involved with it, and we had to draw Michael Gallen's area into Riverview because that's where he lived. So according to our ordinance, and I think Bill will tell us if that's not true, we had to include him since he was already in office, so that's why it's weird, and some of it's into Riverview Boulevard, whoever has that. But I remember that happening, and it actually was not bad because everybody realizes it's about the population. It's all about the population, and I understand, and that's why I think Reggie's district has bled down because the commissioners before you, Gwen, and I don't remember who was before Gwen, truthfully. But I mean, for the minority, we did that, and that's the way it's always been. So that's why it's not a box like everybody else. And I think Darrell Roussan's district is the same way when he was the state rep, how it's bled down into Manatee County. It goes way down to 41. But this is not a political consultant that we're hiring. This is a consultant that's experienced in redistricting. And with us being involved one-on-one with this person, it's going to get political. And this person, we cannot let this happen or we'll be challenged. I've heard there's maps floating around town, and other people have seen them, and I haven't seen any, but I heard they're being passed around by other commissioners. And I don't know if it was this or somebody else passing them around, but I can verify that the only maps I've ever seen is this. So I agree that we need a consultant that is going to give us a decision on data and what we have to do by law. I do like George's idea with the east. I mean, the east and the west. That's a good idea. That's never been brought up, and it really needs to be because all the growth is going to be going out east. So we have to. That's something that maybe the consultant can look at. And we can't, and again, this consultant can't be swayed by a commissioner's argument. I do agree, and I understand why you want it funneled up through you, but there has to be a way that we can somehow get to you, which is hard, get to you to get the information to the consultant. And mainly that's it. But it would be so much easier if we just moved everything further to the west, and that's kind of how we did it last year, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we just moved everything further to the west, east. But we had to draw in Michael Gallen because then he would have been out of his district. So that's what happened historically. But I just wish we could keep the political out of this. I don't think it's going to happen. But I think our consultant made some good points that he is trying to keep it out to defend us if we get challenged. That's all.
I'm going to make a comment right quick before we go to Commissioner Van Ostenbridge about the passing of the maps and so forth. These maps, we're trying to be transparent.
Not these
We're
maps. I've heard there's other maps going around, but I have never seen one. Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't, because
Well, we
it's
all
open.
should get 'em.
That would probably be coming forward. But the bottom line is, it's nothing wrong with showing a map to a constituent.
Oh, no, I'm okay
I can
with
tell you,
that.
I've done it.
Absolutely. No, Madam Chair, I'm okay with that. But if there's
Oh.
other maps going around with ideas on how to redistrict, I've heard they are, and I haven't seen any.
Well,
So if there are, I'd like to see them too, like everybody else, if anybody else has seen them.
Well, there's nothing wrong with doing that. And I have talked to some of my constituents about a map that I've been trying to put together. So you should do the same. You're at large. Commissioner Van Ostenbridge and then Commissioner Bellamy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to agree with Commissioner Bellamy probably and Commissioner Cruz. To be honest, Dr. Hopes, I think for the same reason that you didn't want to be heavily involved in this because of the liability purposes and you didn't want to have to communicate with us, I think that with all due respect, it's the same exact reason that Mr. Guthrie doesn't want to deal with each of us individually and that the liability is being passed to you. But he does ultimately work for us, and so I'm going to agree with Commissioner Bellamy. I think that if it's schedule a certain set number of scheduled meetings that we have each with Guthrie. If it's we each get 2 meetings or whatever it might be. But yeah, I agree with Commissioner Bellamy. We should all have access to Guthrie at some point in time, if not multiple times during the process. I think Commissioner Cruz supported that as well. Okay, yeah. So I would agree with that. I agree with Commissioner Servia in part that we need to make it as transparent as possible. I'm not sure that, because Guthrie at some point has to sit down, at his computer and actually draw the maps, and I don't know that that's going to be able to be during a meeting, where everybody, or a workshop. But as much as possible, it should be done right here. It's not going to be pretty. We're all, so far cordial and polite, but eventually someone's going to say they want a chunk of my district, and I'm going to take issue to that because I have the best district, and I'm quite fond of it all. And I'm quite fond of all of it. We won't say it over the microphone. So, but I do agree with also Commissioner Cruz's point that a rural district, all running together. I liked that because I think that there was some 0 for 2 so far on what I thought I read. Maybe I was medicated when I was sick, but so far I'm 0 for 2 on what I thought I read in the statutes. But I believe it said that we could use environmental geography, which I think that ag probably qualifies as environmental geography. And I use that because I like that I have so much of the coastline in my district, and I want to keep that in my district, which is why I pushed north up into Emerson and that sort of thing. On Commissioner Servia's point of having a constituent a committee, or I'm not quite sure, your committee, okay. My only concern with that is, one, it's a hard job, but it's our job, like it or not. You can't pass it on to a constituent, because then it becomes, if I disagree with the constituents or we disagree with the committee, it's like almost like the standard or the precedent has been set, and now we're, well, what was the point of having the committee if we're going to crumble it up and throw it out? And also, the constituent doesn't have the same obligation to the entire district that we have. So if you pick someone from Bayshore, they're going to I assume you're going to pick someone that likes you, right? So they're going to want to stay in your district. But I may want to, take Bayshore. And then, for instance, I've heard rumors that you want to take the IMG area. So, of course, I'm going to appoint somebody from Elcon, make damn sure that they don't agree to that. And Commissioner Satcher, we know, wants to keep Sneed Island. So he's going to appoint a friend from Sneed Island and make sure that, because Bellamy and I both want to take that, So, anyway, that's the only concern that I see with that is we get into some sort of territorial issues. It's a hard job, but it's our job. So I think we should go ahead with it. Also, there's an app, or not an app, a website called Dave's Redistricting, and everybody's been on that. Okay, so anyway, when I was sick, I was screwing around on that, and I did come up with one that I like. I don't know when is the appropriate time. I printed off like 10 copies. It's like nothing official, but I tried to use major roads and rivers. I even named it that. So I don't know when the appropriate time to turn that into someone to be passed out or to give into Mr. Guthrie, Dr. Hopes, whenever you think is the appropriate time. I will gladly do that. That's right. I like it. I'm 0 for 2 in my ideas when I was sick so far, but anyway. And I actually do Commissioner Cruz's idea of having all of the rule in one. I like that idea too. So anyway, that's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Commissioner Bellamy,
All right, so
and then Commissioner Satcher.
the access, and as far as to the consultant, I honestly think within this workshop we need to set up a timetable. I think our end point is December 14th. It is. Am I correct? Our end point is December.
Is it the 13th or the 14th?
31st for our last scheduled meeting.
Right. So our end point is December the 14th. So I think within this workshop, one of the things that we should get out there is, when is our next workshops going to be as far as the dates? And then if we agree that we're going to have at least 2 public access with the consultant, with the different districts, we need to we may not be able to determine that today, but we need to commit to it today and to identify, that time frame prior to December the 14th or either prior to the next workshop. If he's asking for 3 weeks before he comes with some lines, and I don't know whether or not that's going to be with us in putting our recommendations or without us putting our recommendations. It's kind of, we're in a slippery slope of contradiction here because we're asking the consultant to kind of do the maps and everything like that. And then we got maps that we want to bring, but we can't influence them because we don't want to be political. So we kind of contradicting, we're kind of contradicting ourselves. And I just want to make sure we stay aligned with where we are, with where we are legally. And then to make sure that the elephant in the room is to make sure that we have, representation of a population, and we keep, certain districts where they are. That's the elephant in the room, right? That nobody wants to. We want to make sure District 2, we want to grow, but we want to have that democratic representation. But we cannot have it aligned because it's a political affiliation. So people don't want to talk about that. But I guarantee you, public comment is going to talk about that. And that's why public input is very, very important. The final, no, not the final thing, is making sure that it's clear from the public before they leave today. How are we going to allow them to have input? How are we going to allow them to have input? And then how we schedule this so we can make sure that input, that access, get back to the consultant. So before a conclusion is made, we can assure the people that all 7 of us work for have had a voice, whether it's funded through us, whether it's funded through the county administrator, but we need to make sure that the consultants get the information that we want to have. Representation of the entire population.
I think that's very important. Commissioner Satcher and then Commissioner Servia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to put some things out there so that they're at least said on the record. We don't necessarily have to have a huge debate on them, but we can. First of all, for the record, I hate the idea of using ethnic background as any type of determining factor for drawing lines. If you want to talk about common interest and who lives in town or who likes to, go sailing or whatever you want to come up with, fine. But in the United States of America, I feel like our goal should be to not consider ethnic background as a determining factor. And the second thing that I would like to say, this was said, or that I would just like to put out the opposing viewpoint. As we came to the election in 2020, some interesting things happened. For one thing, after a year of pushing as hard as they could to get a vaccine out, all of a sudden, all medical companies were silent for 2 months before the election. And sure enough, 3 weeks after the election, the vaccine was announced and rolled out. Due process and laws in states, especially some swing states, was changed at the last minute to allow voters to come in or voting processes to come in that had never been allowed before, using COVID as the guise for that. And then also delayed was the census. And so the census was put off, and then suddenly it comes out. Do I know the details behind the census? I know that it seems very strange that New York State only lost 1 congressional seat and Florida only gained 1 congressional seat, knowing what we all know about the population, where people have moved, the decisions that they've made in the last 10 years regarding New York State and the state of Florida. So I think that it is important that when you disagree with a premise, you go ahead and state that I disagree with the premise that that there were populations undercounted that should have been overcounted, at least in the way that it was implied earlier by Commissioner. Like I said, we can debate it all day, but I just want to put it on the record that I disagree with that statement. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Servia and then Commissioner Whitmore.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So good discussion. Again, I like it, you guys. And Commissioner Van Ostenbridge knows that hard work doesn't scare me, so I know that you understand that. But I do believe that it's very critical to involve the public. So I'm not asking for someone to replace a commissioner, but to work in tandem with it. I have a question for our consultant, if he's still on Zoom, and that is, does involving individual commissioners directly with our consultant put the process at risk? because that's what I don't want to do. I want this to be tied up so tightly with a bow that there's no chance of a lawsuit, which means we have to do it the right way. And so for those reasons, again, I go back to, we have 8 weeks approximately between now and December 13th, the adoption day. I would like to set those 2 public hearings in November and early December, and we could have a workshop every week until then. We could easily have 6 workshops. We could do 8 workshops. Again, not afraid of hard work. It could even be on the weekend if for some reason we got to go there, because this is perhaps the most important thing we're going to do in the next 10 years. And we have to involve the public. So if we have a workshop, and I'm sorry, Commissioner Ball, I'll let you ask your questions of me next, because it seems like you don't agree, and that's okay. But if we're going to have workshops...
Oh, trust me, I will, just for that.
Yes, ma'am. If we're going to have to have one workshop and hear the public and hear the commissioners, and then on the alternate workshop, our consultant can come forward and say, based on what I heard, here are the lines I drew. And then we can go, oh, no, we don't like that. We like this. How about that? And the public chimes in, and then it's redrawn again, and then we discuss it again. And I think if we go through a process like that, that's completely transparent, in the sunshine, everyone gets a voice, we end up with the maps that we need, along with our consultant's guidance. So that's what I'm proposing, please, I'd like to see. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to butt in here. I'm next on the board. In a moment. In a moment. Commissioner Servia, I have a job here where I need to be able to keep up with all the commissioners to make sure they're on the board. You're always trying to get me to recognize you. So in trying to do that, that might mean that sometimes I look down this way and I'm trying to acknowledge that, yes, I've got it or whatever. Doesn't mean that I had any questions for you, although I do, and I will have one, but I will ask it after the consultant. Thank you.
Okay, and I do respect your
Guthrie.
role. I do respect your role, Madam Chairman, of course.
Well,
and I know it can be difficult.
Don't just assume.
I know it can be difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
if you would answer Commissioner Servia's question, please. I don't blame him.
And let me make sure I understand the question. It's what I heard was we
need
wonder,
quiet, please.
but and maybe Commissioner Servia, you could restate the question briefly.
Yes, sir. Be happy to. Does involving individual commissioners meeting directly with you put our process at risk for a lawsuit?
Well, the risk of a lawsuit is just there. If members if a potential litigant feels strongly enough about some government action that they want to file a lawsuit, they can do that. If they do, it will be up to the commission and up to the commission's witnesses to defend the government action that was taken. Would it be, so there is nothing inherently wrong with a consultant meeting with individual commissioners. Okay. If that is the process that that the commission wants, then you can make that choice, and that's what we will do. That will involve more of my time to have those meetings. And it will, and whatever transpires during those meetings will be subject to deposition and consideration in future litigation. So does that answer the question at all? So can we have lots of individual meetings? Yes. During my experience with the Florida legislature in the 1980s, the 1990s, all the way through just before 2010, when the new requirement was put in place, that political considerations not factor into redistricting, I would have multiple individual meetings with senators, with representatives, and there was assumed to be nothing wrong with that. And again, the provisions relating to partisan considerations that are in place for congressional and legislative districts are not directly addressed for county commission districts.
Madam Chairman, may I?
Sure.
Okay. So yes, thank you. That does mostly answer my question, and it allows me to go back to my original thought, which is you were hired by the board. You should represent the board, which is a collective body, and it should be at workshops that are transparent and open to the public and not individual meetings. That's my goal. Thank you.
Mr. Clegg, did you have something to add, sir?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I do. I want to kind of step back here. I think it's important to start by understanding what the law is as it applies to counties as opposed to congressional or legislative districts. So the first thing to understand is that this is driven by language in the Florida Constitution that says after each decennial census, the Board of County Commissioners shall divide the county into districts of contiguous territory as nearly equal in population as practicable. And there are some Attorney General opinions and cases that talk about what that means. Every county is different, and the law recognizes that. So you can take into account the factors that are relevant in your local government, in your local community, in terms of how you divide up those districts. The important thing is to be consistent in using that methodology for the entire county. You can't do it one way in one part of the county and another way in another part of the county. The courts and the Attorney General's office look with disdain upon that practice. It is about population, not voters. They emphasize that. We're talking about people. Counties that have prisons in them have to include prisoners who cannot even vote when they do their redistricting. There is law on that. So that also gives you a lot of flexibility, though. You're looking at people across a spectrum, and there is a reasonable range of discretion allowed there in state law. It doesn't have to be exact. You don't have to get to zero. I think anything more than a 10% variation is probably legally risky. And so you can't exceed that even if you're trying to account for future anticipated growth. You don't have to wait 10 years to redistrict again if growth is driving changes. You can do it more often than that. At a minimum, you must do it every 10 years. One of the things that's causing a lot of heartburn around the state right now for local governments is that Chapter 124 Florida statute says you must do this in odd number years. And the census data is late, as Dr. Hopes stated. It has dragged on, and so everybody is running up against this deadline. You're not alone in getting the data. In the last quarter, you're dealing with it. You have to do it every 10 years, but you have to do it in 2021. You can't do it in 2022. So everybody's having the same heartburn. But the important thing to understand is as long as you are meeting those general guidelines in terms of getting as close as you can within 10% or less population-wise, you can consider a lot of things. I have to tell you that under federal law, you cannot ignore ethnicity, race, because of the Federal Voting Rights Act. So there is a good article that was published last week about the advice that the firm of Schutz and Bowen, which is an excellent law firm, gave to the Senate Redistricting Committee in Tallahassee. And if you'd like, I can forward that around to you. And that basically tells you, what the standards are under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. There isn't a lot of debate about that in the legal profession right now. There's quite a bit of literature out there from FACA and from other local League of Cities. So, it's something you have to look at. It's something you can't just completely ignore. So other than that, the one other point I wanted to make was, if you're going to draw maps and share them, please do it in board meetings. You don't want to be emailing each other maps. That's a sunshine law violation, because you're then kind of having an electronic meeting. So I know some of you have brought some today. That's the right way to handle it. But if we leave this room and then commissioners start exchanging maps, then we have a sunshine law problem, which could then affect the legal validity of your decision in December. So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. All right, I'm not,
I was on the board and then you took.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Commissioner Whitmore, please.
That's all right. I wanted to make a comment. The reason why the census was delayed was COVID. And that is why, because we were all more or less not going anywhere. So that was justified. And to me, thank God for the vaccines. We also, we had meetings that went virtual immediately. Meals on Wheels stopped. We had to figure out a way to get people their food. We couldn't find drivers. So a lot of this stuff happened because of COVID. And one of the biggest things was the census. And I had written that the minority population has to be considered in redistricting. And I was going to ask if that, I mean, you more or less said it. Legally, we have to, correct? Yeah, well, I wrote this when it was mentioned by a commissioner. I just want to verify it. And you more or less said it. Am I correct? And that's why Michael Gallons.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Whitmore, I think if you want to talk in greater detail about that, it's not a simple one-word answer.
Okay. All right. And I 100% agree. More workshops. If we have to have this done by December. Dr. Hopes, I think what you're hearing from the board, they want to have input. I think from the way that you had suggested it would have probably been cleaner, but our commissioners want to have input with our consultants, so we're going to have to just figure out a way, and I'm sure that's going to adjust the contract. So just keep us up to date on what that's going to cost us if we do it. I agree with Commissioner Servia, the more the better, so we can be transparent, and that's it.
Yeah,
Clerk needs a break?
that's the note I passed. The clerk needs a break, please.
All right, we're going to take a 10-minute recess. Thank you.
East Bay.
Okay, so it's a little further east than okay.
All right, this work session is now back. Yeah, I've got a couple of things I'm going to start off with. I've been kind of quiet. First of all, I want to talk about, it seems to me that the legislature, the Constitution, even better, the Constitution says that the commissioners are supposed to redistrict. It doesn't say anything about anybody else. We represent the citizens that they've elected us to represent them. So we need to remember that. I mean, as far as, and I think it was Commissioner Cruz, I believe, who made the comment, you need to talk to your constituents. Have town hall meetings, have Zoom meetings, whatever it takes. That is what we are supposed to do. And when we're doing that, we're doing our jobs. I mean, that's what we're hired by our citizens to do. The second thing is that I'm a little confused. I'm going to ask Mr. Clegg a question. I don't quite understand. I know I've heard a lot from Commissioner Bellamy, and I'm concerned about it. I want to make sure we do the right thing. But what are the triggers that we need to be concerned with,
Well,
Mr. Clegg?
Madam Chair,
seriously,
speaking about
what are we looking at
on the subject of
ethnicity?
Okay.
What do we do
So
there?
I think the best thing I can do is just reference what the legal advice the Florida legislature has received on this issue from the firm of Schutz and Bowen. So Section 2 of the Federal Voting Rights Act, which applies uniformly throughout the country, prohibits states from enacting redistricting that creates less opportunity for minorities to elect representatives to elected bodies. And so the standard that they talk about is cracking and packing is the term that they talk about. In other words, breaking them up into smaller groups or packing them into a district in a way that prevents them from being able to elect representation. There's no bright line for it. It's a balancing act. It's just something we have to take into consideration because obviously we have to meet the standard for adjusting district boundaries to reflect the changes in population. We can't ignore that standard in order to get around this issue. But when we are adjusting, we want to make sure if we have an existing voting minority representation that we're not disadvantaging it more than we need to meet the standard. But there's no magic. There's no magic. It means we're going to have to look at the maps and we're going to have to make some judgments and make sure what we do is legally defensible. My point earlier was we simply can't ignore the issue because the federal law doesn't allow us to.
And I appreciate that comment. It gives me a little bit of a better understanding because the last thing I want to do is to hinder voters. I mean,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have no reason to ever want to do that. But yet at the same time, I'm also looking at, redistricting that needs to be done. And it wouldn't be fair to put, James and myself, where we're so overpopulated, it wouldn't be fair to only give that difference to Commissioner Van Ostenbridge and Commissioner Servia. It's got to be across the board and it's got to be a balance. So that's why I wanted to hear you say, I just wasn't sure how to handle that.
I think the best way I can summarize it is we're going to have to do our best to get to that 10% variation between districts or less, and we're going to want to do it in a way that avoids breaking up,
Right.
groups of voters that are protected under the Voting Rights Act. But we're still going to have to get to that numerical standard of 10% or less in
Right,
terms of
got it.
variation between districts. We don't
Okay.
get a pass from doing that.
All right, I appreciate that. And one last thing I just want to say, we have a tough job in front of us, commissioners, and we got to do it quickly. So we're having to figure out the best procedure to follow to get it done. One thing I would like to say is that as it being our job as commissioners and being voted by our constituents to represent them, that's our job. And we're going to have to take it seriously and we're going to have to do it. It's up to us to do that. And the other thing is that when you're at home, if you're drinking a glass of iced tea or a glass of wine, it doesn't matter. And you and your husband are sitting there, you and Andre, and y'all are sitting there and you're trying to figure out districts. There's nothing wrong with that. You're doing your job. You're doing your job. And I just bring that up because of something that Mr. Clegg said. Mr. Clegg talked about how as long as we're not emailing drawings, I've not emailed any drawings to any commissioner. And I'm sure I haven't received any either. So from any commissioners. So the bottom line is, though, we can talk to anybody that we want to about them. That is being, in a sense, transparent. We need to do that. So let's just start doing our jobs and stop worrying about, are we being transparent enough? We're in a public meeting today with citizens here. That's why we had this workshop. It's a public meeting, and we're going to have more. So let's get to it. That being said, I don't have any other commissioners on the board. Dr. Hopes or... Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Commissioner Van
That's okay.
Ostenbridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, yeah, I would agree with you. Obviously, if we're at home, as long as we're not sharing with other commissioners, it is our job to work on this. But my question is for Mr. Guthrie, and that's that I was thought that I'd read that major roads and rivers should be, keeping things compact, right? So you don't get like gerrymandered looking districts and trying to have, like these tight, compact districts, and also major roads and rivers should be your target for your boundary lines, along with the county line, of course. Is that accurate? Do I remember that correctly?
Those are traditional redistricting standards nationally. They are standards that apply under the Florida Constitution to state legislative and congressional plans. It is not an explicit requirement for county commission districts. The county attorney sort of recited what the constitutional requirements are, which are fairly minimal as to considerations other than population that go into redistricting. And as the county attorney said, the Federal Voting Rights Act, Section 2, also needs to be considered.
Okay, thank you.
So,
I clearly read statutes on congressional and state, because literally everything I've brought up to this point, he said, applies to congressional and state. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
I think it's the
Could
medication.
could I add a comment to that?
Yes, please.
We have this big river that goes right down the middle of the county, and it's a big geographical dividing mark. And if you think about it, if they applied that to us,
Then Commissioner
that same
Bellamy's
standard,
district would be cut in half. As
it would, and
Commissioner
it would make
Satcher.
it really hard to do local districts.
Right.
It would just be very
Okay,
difficult.
because originally I wanted to jump the river and go north, and then I thought that rivers and major roads were supposed to be these boundaries, and so then I changed my mind and decided maybe I shouldn't go north, but maybe I should go north.
I think you want to be at large.
I think I'll change my mind 6 times between
Yeah,
by
he
the time
wants
we're
to be at
finished.
large,
but-
and I'll switch with you, please.
Anything else, sir? Commissioner Whitmore.
And the reason why I'm not really saying much is because Commissioner Cruz and I, we represent the entire county. So I knew this was going to be a dogfight, and I'm just going to sit back and relax and watch it and hopefully have input. But, I really do think what we've gotten out of this today is we need more work sessions, because I don't think everybody's happy with what we've heard so far. So what I'm taking away is let's just get on the schedule. And I know you all really try hard to do Tuesdays and Thursdays, but if you have to do other days, put them on. And if we do weekends, that's fine. I will be bringing my husband. But, wherever it is, I will do it. We can all do it just for the next 8 weeks to get this done.
Any other commissioners? I do have a question for our consultant. Commissioner Satcher?
I just want to say I think that's jumping the gun. I mean, because we haven't seen everything, what's been offered. So, so if we have a proposal that works, then we wouldn't need to do that. So just the only point I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Cruz?
I 100% agree with Commissioner Satcher. I mean, it sounds good to say let's have a work session literally every day for the next 8 weeks. But if every work session is just going to be this of just asking arbitrary questions, that's what today is for all of us to get an understanding of the process. And now it's a matter of starting to draw maps. If we have 7 of us plus public plus Dr. Ups, literally moving lines one street at a time, we're never going to get to the exact right map. We're never going to get to a point where everyone's happy. We're just going to keep wasting time endlessly and spinning wheels until December 12th saying, oh crap, what map do we need? Because we got to vote on it tomorrow. I think we should let the process work. I still think everyone should have an opportunity to speak with a consultant and put forth their versions of maps for discussion purposes in conjunction with the consultants. And then we vote on a map. If we need to have another one in the interim, then by all means, let's do it. But to say we need 8 of this, I mean, this was this. It gave us all information, gave us an opportunity to ask questions, but what are we going to do? I mean, if someone can honestly tell me what we're going to do other than pull the software up and everyone scream about should that road be Lockwood Ridge or one street over, we're not going to accomplish anything. We're just spinning wheels to look like we're being busy.
I'm going to butt in here before I go to Commissioner Servia and Mr. Clegg. Mr. Guthrie, how soon do you think you might have a map for us to be able to look at?
The generating 5 districts in Manatee County would not take very long. If it really depends on what additional considerations that the commission directs me to factor in to the drawing of the map. But if it's just to equalize population and maybe preserve the cores of the existing districts, that could be done very quickly in a matter of days, if not hours.
And the reason I'm asking, sir, is it's not my intention to try to rush you by any means, because I know this is very important. But at the same time, when I have commissioners looking at us going, we need to have workshops if it takes one every day, it's not going to do us any good until we hear from you. I mean, you are the star, in a sense, of this endeavor. So, I personally wanted to see a consultant come in to do this because I think we need to make sure that it's done in an honest and unbiased way. And I have that faith in you, sir, to do that. So I just wanted to ask and make sure that all the commissioners knew that if we leave it up to our consultant, we will have a place to start that really might work. And I don't think that it's fair that anyone have issue with that at this point because you haven't even done anything yet. So we don't have anything to look at and to base any unhappiness with. I think that, we know what the law is. It's been made very clear to us today. And we can sit and we can talk about this for hours at a time, but that's the bottom line. So that's why I just wanted to ask Commissioner Servia and then Mr. Clegg and then Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I don't suggest that we have a meeting every single day. What I do suggest is that we schedule out some meetings in anticipation that it may take 8 meetings, and let's hope it's only 3. But why not plan for the future and the worst case scenario by having workshops scheduled so the room is scheduled and everyone's aware, and then hopefully we get it done sooner. And my idea of how this would work is Mr. Guthrie would go back and maybe even prepare 2 different scenarios for each district. And when we come back to meeting 2 and we discuss them and we give him our comments, and he goes back and does it again and comes back with a couple of scenarios. And I seriously don't think it'll take that long. And the reason I think it's important for Mr. Guthrie to interact with the board instead of with individual commissioners is because I understand that if there's a challenge in the future, then you're going to have people deposed as witnesses for those particular meetings between Mr. Guthrie and an individual commissioner, which is going to get expensive and nasty, and I just don't want that to even be a possibility. So why not do all this work in a workshop with the board as the collective body that it is?
Mr. Clegg.
Madam Chair, a couple of points. One, just to kind of come in behind what you said, I think we should be getting our money's worth out of the consultant, quite honestly. We're going to pay the consultant to generate some maps, and we ought to see them. I don't think that should prevent any commissioner from having input or having discussions with the consultant if that's something they're inclined to do. But I would like to see what they produce, and I would suggest that it come back to you not in a work session, but in a special meeting, so that if you need to take some votes about how you want the consultant to move with those maps, it is the board that redistricts, not the individual commissioners. Commissioner Cruz, as you pointed out earlier, it's the board that has retained this consultant to do the board's work. So it is better if you meet in a special meeting and not a work session. I do want to say, it's my job to think about litigating stuff, and I get to do it all day long. And I've spent quite a lot of time thinking about the possibility of litigating this. And I understand what the consultant is saying. The more that the map is his product that he can testify to, the better the case. But we don't want to be, so afraid of litigation that commissioners don't get to talk to the consultant. I mean, that's going too far. So, as long as we're doing things in the open when we are making decisions, it's my job to defend you all in your decisions, and I'm ready to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg. I could not agree more. Commissioner Cruz, then Commissioner Van Ostenbridge.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, everything we do on this board risks litigation. But that's why we sit around with Piney Point for decades on end, because we're scared of making a decision because we may get sued. Half the maps in the state of Florida, half the maps in the United States are going to get pulled in front of court at some point in time. That's just what happens with redistricting. It doesn't mean you stop redistricting or you stifle the system. If we want to have dialogue as a board with the commissioner or the consultant prior to anyone meeting them individually, then maybe either after lunch day, if we're still going to be here after lunch day, or in a separate meeting, we all show up and give some guidance, because he doesn't live in Manatee County. Like this, the rural area, like that may not be something that even occurs to the consultant to do, because we can't expect him with all of his clients to learn the intimate details of every single community. Like, for instance, Bayshore Gardens, maybe that fits with Whitfield and fits with Scheller State. So if there's a way of making sure that still stays as a collective body, it's good. We have an urban core north of the river, an urban core south of the river. There's certain areas that just make logical sense that he may just not be party to, but individual commissioners who've had town halls and had meetings and been to HOAs with people, understand some of those dynamics. So maybe that's how we get the first batch of map or two, is being able to throw out to him, here's some things we should consider, because he can get the sense of the board, whether or not that seems like policy agreement. And then at least we get a better quality first map. Instead of just expanding every line to get to 80,000 apiece, there is consideration for rural, for urban core, for out by the islands, for some of these other areas, because honestly, we do almost have 5 distinct little areas of Manatee County, and you can draw them in close proximity to each other, because you do have the urban area, you've got the Lake Ranch kind of new young professional kind of area, you've got it all works. But he may not know that, so maybe we all just either have a separate meeting, or later today, if we're still, depending on how long this goes, everyone just come back with some thoughts of, here's some things I want you to consider, and then we see what his first map looks like.
Could not agree more. Commissioner Van Ostenbridge.
So Commissioner Cruz made several of my points, which mainly was that you can't govern scared. And, we should be able to meet with the consultant individually. I agree with Commissioner Bellamy on that. The concern that we're going to try and influence Mr. Guthrie, I am 100% going to try and influence Mr. Guthrie. Let me make that clear. My top concern, we're redistricting, is District 3 and keeping the coastline together and keeping, that sort of environmental area intact. And my next concern, I guess, is making sure none of y'all get drawn out of your districts. But outside of that, I really don't care that much. I'm concerned about District 3, and I want it to look the way I want it to look, and I intend to influence him as much as possible.
I want some of mine gone.
Some of your what?
Too big.
Yours is you keep approving all those developments, Commissioner Baugh, and that's what happens. It's too big.
Ooh. The ones that
I'm just
you
teasing
always
her
vote
about
for,
growth.
sometimes I don't.
Yeah,
I
I'm teasing her about
understand.
growth. But and I had a question, and I can't remember exactly. Oh, I know my question was. So I brought my printed off maps, Attorney Clegg, but now I've learned some things, and some of what I was doing wasn't in line with congressional and state, and I want to change it. I have not shown anyone at this board my map. Am I free to take it home and redo it and bring it back?
Oh, make him show it.
Dawn, habit. You are free to change it, of course, but it is a public record at this point.
Why?
Because Florida laws.
Well, I was asking the attorney.
No, there's no like draft exception for public records. Some
Okay.
people believe that, but no.
So I'll just give it to Dr. Hopes before I leave.
you could give it to the clerk, or you can give it to Debbie
Okay.
Scacinoce.
I'll give it to
I
the
mean,
clerk,
everything
yeah.
you all generate on this stuff is public record. You should be aware that, and I'm glad you asked. Everything is public record here.
Sure.
There's
Okay.
no not sharing the map if someone wants to see it, but obviously you can change it as you like.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Satcher and then Commissioner Bellamy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I feel like some of my role here today might be to set the record straight. And there's been some seriously inaccurate information that's been communicated from Commissioner Van Ostenbridge. The best district in the county is definitely District 1. No doubt about it. As evidenced by the fact that everyone's eyeing my district and trying to carve it up and put it for themselves. So just wanted that to be on record. Thank you.
I would totally disagree with your statement, but that's okay. Commissioner Bellamy.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, the next step in getting some of the things out there as far as, how do we move things forward to get those first, maps out there. From my perspective, there's been no communication from me or anything like that to anybody about maps, anything like that. My guy over here said something about Sneed Island. I don't know nothing about that. I don't want nobody to misinterpret that for something inappropriately. But and people are going to do that anyway. That's just how people are. Be who you are and do what you want to do. But as long as the record's straight. But the reality of it, from my perspective, is obviously I believe that District 2 is the best district. So everybody put that out there. But I am going to take and make sure that I do my best to make sure we maintain District 2 and try to influence him to make sure that, District 2 is not drawn out and District 2 is put in a situation where we can continue to have that representation, for the record.
You don't think that Mr. Guthrie has never heard all that before, do you?
I'm
just saying.
I'm just making sure you do.
Yeah. Commissioner Whitmore and Commissioner Serbia.
Here's my concern, and I agree with the concept of east and west at some point, but by law, doesn't the population still have to be even throughout the entire county? And I know Commissioner Baugh has East County, including Myakka and all that. And even if she went over to the north part of the county out east, she'd still need more west.
No, I don't have to do all that.
Well, that's kind of what Commissioner Cruz was saying of all of the rural area of the county. That's north, that's like the DeWitt and also Myakka area. So to me, that's not 70, 80, 90,000 people. So we would still.
It is because Thatcher lives way over in Ellington, so you'd still have to drag it across the top of the river to incorporate James into the map. So that'll take a big population. And if you take Myakka and basically run it out, call it to the FDAB or Bourneside or Irvine or whatever line you keep moving it to make sense, that just pushes the chair out further west, which then she'll end up picking up because she has all that extra space in Tara and University Park. It's just a matter of where the end of her line is before Misty or Reggie or whomever.
But then it's not rural.
You're not going to make it 100%
Okay.
of any kind. Just like there's
We all
parts of an
know
urban
that.
core district that is an urban
I know
core.
there's not enough people.
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Serbia.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A very good point was brought up by Commissioner Cruz, which is they should be special meetings. I wasn't remembering that you couldn't vote. That you couldn't vote in a workshop, or okay, or then I'm sorry, Mr. Clegg's idea, and that does make sense. That does make complete sense. I was not considering that we would have a lot of discussion that we couldn't act on, and I think we should be able to act. So rather than workshops, I would suggest a lot of special meetings be scheduled out, and if we don't need them, then we don't use them. I am not afraid of anything, pretty much, but I always do a risk-benefit analysis, that's all. So there is a lot of risk in litigation, and this is a highly litigious topic. That's all that I'm considering when I suggest that we should do as much in the public sunshine as we can. But I don't have an objection to individual commissioners meeting with our consultant necessarily. I just think it gets stickier. I mean, it's definitely easier for me if I can talk to him and tell him what I want to do. And so if that's what the board wants to do, that's fine. But I do think it's very important to involve the public and have lots of meetings and get through this as systematically as we can. Thank you.
And I'm going to, again, add that, I in no way want to, and this goes back to Commissioner Van Ostenbridge, I in no way want to try and influence the consultant, because if we do, then let's not pay him to be our consultant. That's his job, is to come up with the best plan for this county and to make it be absolutely the best it can be for all the districts. And that's what I want to see. I'm not trying to, I have no reason to want to mess with anyone's district. I love my district, and contrary to some of the others you've heard here, mine is the best. That's why it's growing so rapidly. That's why, Commissioner, it's the #1 selling community in America. I'm just saying. Sorry, guys, I can't let you take it all. But you know what? Seriously, all jokes aside, we just need the consultant to be allowed to do his job. At that point, when we see something from our consultant, which I've got a feeling it's going to be fairly soon, then let's have a meeting. But until we have something to have a meeting for, have your town hall meetings, have your Zoom meetings, whatever you need to do, and however you want to go about talking with your constituents, do whatever you need to do. That is your job. That is what you're supposed to do as a commissioner. According to the Constitution, we do the maps, commissioners. So talk to your constituents and get a good understanding of where they're coming from and what they want to see. Because you know what? We don't know how it's going to turn out. We know that we want to keep Commissioner Bellamy's district similar to what it is, but we also know it's going to have to change because of the population growth that we've seen. So, and that goes for all of our districts. I think there's only 2 here that will get smaller, and I'm happy. I'm happy with that. And that's me and Commissioner Satcher. I know he's not pleased. I can see it on his face. But in all honesty, you need to remember that you can better serve your constituents if it's a size district that you can manage. And I can tell you mine's at the point where it's tough for one person to cover it. And I'm thankful for Commissioner Cruz going out and having town hall meetings and so forth in my district, because it's made it much easier for me, because it's kind of difficult to cover the landmass that I have. I don't have any other commissioners on the board. Commissioner Servia, you've got your card up, I think. Commissioner, no? Commissioner Satcher, did you have something to add, sir?
Yeah, at high risk. Okay, so no more series. At high risk to myself, I wanted to dialogue with the county attorney. Speaking about the federal laws that we mentioned earlier, when I hear that law, I feel like it's while it may say we have to consider ethnicity, it seems like the point is to acknowledge what has already been done in the past, which is when people are using that. You understand my point?
Well, I think so. So basically what it says is you cannot use redistricting to disadvantage a group that's
Right.
represented. Does that mean you have to go out and draw new districts for other groups? No, it does not. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, the packing and the, what was the phrase?
Cracking is what they call it, cracking and packing.
Cracking and packing.
Yeah.
That's, just for the record, that's the opposite of what I'm saying.
Okay.
Right? So I don't want to, to draw certain particular things with that in mind, and the fact that the federal government has made a determination that that can be considered when it's subjected to, that just seems like their way of saying we're going to recognize what we see at face value. If we see something that looks what we consider gerrymandered, that we're going to give someone a basis to object. That's the opposite of what I'm saying. I'm saying we, shouldn't end up in that situation to begin with.
I do understand, sir. I would like to make one quick point about your dialogue with the consultant. The most important thing to remember when you talk to the consultant is what you say is not privileged, like it is when you talk to me. So if there is litigation, there's no privilege we can assert to prevent that dialogue from coming out in testimony in court. That's the main issue that I think he was addressing in his comments. I have to be honest with you, in terms of risk of litigation, that really depends on how we handle this. I mean, I've seen a lot of counties handle it and not have any litigation. It's pretty unusual that you see litigation against counties. I just happened to be pitching a bond deal in Hillsborough County 20 years ago when they were doing the same thing in front of their Board of County Commissioners. And the dialogue you're having now is not at all unusual. I mean, this is the process. So, as long as we are staying within the guidelines, we should be okay.
All right, I am not seeing any more commissioners on the board. Dr. Host, did you have anything to add? I'd like to.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have some suggestions. We have on calendar-wise, we've got a work session next week on the 27th. We could change that to a special meeting on redistricting. I think the consultant can, at least based on my conversations with them, have an initial map that merely moves districts 2, 3, and 4 to the east to pick up population, and that can be a discussion point. In addition to that, I have received a few maps from folks that have been given to our GIS staff to put them in. There may have been a misunderstanding of the process that we were working through. My objective was to give you access to your GIS staff to show you the same information the consultant has, the same software, the same data, the lines, and get your thoughts into the system to then pass on to the consultant. And I think there's enough time there. We also have a work session that's scheduled for November 9th. We can make that a special meeting for redistricting. By then, I do believe you will have plenty of options with regards to maps, including your conversations with the consultant so that you can take action, and then you can take those maps to public hearings before you adopt whatever you adopt on December 14th. Should you find a need to have additional public meetings around redistricting, we can sort of backfill some of the days. But I can tell you, perhaps what we should do is for those two meetings that I mentioned, change them from a work session to a special meeting on redistricting. And then what I can do is work on scheduling your time with the consultant in anticipation of these meetings so your thoughts can be shared with him either virtually or we can have him come down here. But I agree, we need to get things on the calendar because what we have before us is a very tight timeline. But I do want to remind you that you have GIS staff that have been working with these base maps. That's the same information that the consultant has. It's the same account that the consultant is using. Just as a former consultant, I'm just trying to give you a head start in your conversations with the consultant because he is charging us by the hour, meaning he's charging the taxpayers by the hour. So I'm just trying to make it more efficient. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just real quick, the 27th, that's our work session on environmental lands. You're not going to cancel it? No. No. No, but
just
that's
saying-
at 1:30. We could still do morning.
We could do a morning.
Yeah.
I'm not saying cancel anything. I'm just telling you, I at least know that is on your calendar as a day that's blocked off.
Right. I really want to keep that one too, because we've been waiting.
Just a question about advertising. Do we have enough time to advertise those meetings? We do.
For a special meeting, yes,
Okay.
ma'am, we do.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the 27th as are we identifying it as a workshop or a special meeting? And so you're saying at a special meeting, we could potentially draw a conclusion on maps and end everything. And that's my concern because, stranger things have happened, and that's my point.
No. Not a conclusion. You would adopt. Should we be at that place? Which I don't think we're going to be at that place. You can
Right, that's
vote
what I'm going to.
You can vote to adopt a map to publish. You still have to go through 2 public hearings and another meeting to finalize anything. But as Mr. Clegg said, and as someone else brought up, if we call a special meeting, you can take action to direct the consultant or direct me to do something as a corporate body, as the board of county commissioners, as opposed to an individual.
Well, my intent was not to put the cart before the horse. We have the special meetings, and yes, we can vote for them, but we still have to make sure we keep the public hearings out there. And I want to make sure that was out front. That's why I brought it up that way.
That is a public meeting, is it not?
Wait,
Right? It's yeah.
It's a public meeting.
Okay,
It's advertised.
right. I'm done.
It's no different.
Not at this point, Madam Chair.
So, I don't have any other commissioners on the board, but again, I'm going to stress it again. Commissioners, talk to your constituents. We can have all the meetings in the world, but the main thing is district commissioners. And you know what? I'm going to include the at-large. I mean, same thing. Talk to the people, talk to the citizens of Manatee County. Know what they're looking for, what they're thinking. Bring it forward. That's your job. That's our jobs. So let's keep that in mind. In trying to move this forward, when we're in a time restraint as we are, that's going to be very important. I can't stress it enough. I don't have any other comments. Mr. Guthrie, before we move forward to public comment, is there anything you'd like to add, sir?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to convene with you this morning and begin getting your input of how you would like your districts fashioned. I'm not sure that I quite understand the east-west divide that we were talking about earlier. Is the notion there that you would have one district that would be the entire easterly portion of Manatee County, and you would work west from there as far as you need to? Because currently Districts 1 and District 5 both extend out to the eastern boundary of the county. Do we want to keep 2 districts extending out to the eastern boundary, or would you rather see as a starting point that a single district start at the eastern boundary and proceed west?
And Mr. Guthrie, I'll be the first commissioner. I'm sure Commissioner Satcher will want to chime in on this as well, since it's our 2 districts that you're referring to. Personally, I think that all of rural Manatee needs to be in one district. And I say that from the standpoint of we have so much going on right now in Manatee County when it comes to the eastern part of our county. And, you know, with talk about moving the urban service boundary, with all the growth that they're looking at doing, you know, and for me, you know, I want to keep our rural areas rural. And you know, I mean, that's been what it's all about for the 9 years I've been on this board. So I do think it would behoove, and I'm not saying it needs to go to me, I'm not trying to say that, but what I am saying is that I think it behooves our rural area, all of the rural area of Manatee, to be in one district. I think they'd get better representation that way. That's all I'm saying. Commissioner Satcher, did you want to add in on that, sir?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'll probably need to have some conversations, you know, outside of this meeting with you, if possible. Or, I mean, okay. So here, there's always going to be a little bit of. I like my district, so I like the fact that I have Sneed Island and Emerson Point and the port, and I love Parrish, and that's where, you know, Ben and my family, and we love it, in Ellington. So, and even out to Duet. So, I like it the way it is. So anything that goes away is going to, I'll feel it. I do have some other ideas besides making a full east-west district that might solve some of the exact same problems. But I'll hold those in reserve now. And I'm not necessarily saying, I mean, I love the country. So, so we'll see. But, and I can share those with you or the GIS staff, whatever this process is supposed to entail.
Well, Mr. Guthrie, there you have it. The two commissioners.
And let me just, sorry to say one more thing. First of all, there's 7 people on this board, you know, so you've got 4 Republicans and 3 Democrats on this board. So it's always going to be a separation between everybody's opinion. So it's going to be really hard for you to get, you know, perfectly clear direction, but we can do the best we can going forward.
Please. All right, people, it's hard to hear. I'm sorry, please. You'll get public comment very soon, I promise. Commissioner Satcher, are you finished, sir? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Serbia.
Commissioner Satcher, I just wanted to correct what you said. There are 6 Republicans on the board and 1 Democrat.
What did he say?
Thank you.
Oh. No, I wasn't. Sorry. I was looking at the audience. I apologize. Okay. Well, we're not going to go there right now. I think enough has been said. So, Mr. Guthrie, I'm sure you're accustomed to what you're hearing from us today, and we look forward to seeing some maps from you. And we're going to go sort of public comment, unless there's anything else from the board. Okay, we're paying you by the hour. Mr. Guthrie, it's a pleasure, seriously. Thank you, sir. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open public comment. Yes?
He's not going to hear from the public?
He's still on.
Oh,
what are you talking about?
You said, we thought you said goodbye.
I didn't say goodbye. I said thank you for your time, sir. Wow. Okay. I do not have any cards from anybody. This is a workshop, so we don't do it that way. But if you'd come up one at a time to the podium, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes, please.
Good morning, Commissioners and Dr. Hopes. I'm Susie Copeland, and I'm today speaking on behalf of the Manatee County NAACP, as well as myself as a citizen and resident of District 2 for over 50 years. And I've got several points I'd like to discuss. My first point is that District 2 has the highest minority population than any of the other districts here in Manatee County. And any changes that significantly change the dynamics of this district will certainly dilute the population. Any plans should always meet the federal and state criteria. Equal population, if practicable. Comply with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Section 2, fair district constitutional provision here in the state of Florida, the Supreme Court case Thornburg v. Gingles, you can't favor or disfavor any political party or incumbent. You can't draw the lines with the intent or the result in denying or limiting opportunities for racial or language minorities from the political process of their ability to elect the representatives of their choice. The districts shall be compact. Where feasible, you must use the political and geographical boundaries. Point 2. Your redistricting process should be transparent, fair, nonpartisan, with citizens engaged in that process. We ask that as you communicate your redistricting message to the citizens in layman terms, terms that every citizen can truly understand. When you propose a map, please provide the data on the population, the breakdown, the percentage of the demographics of that line, and an explanation of why the lines are being drawn, thus so. Point 3, utilize the engagement template piece that has been used for a number of years and a number of censuses redrawings here in Manatee County when the NAACP and other stakeholders had a seat at the table in redrawing District 2 that created these fair districts. And point 4, District 2 has similar characteristics within the neighborhood patterns. All of our churches are there, our housing, our community centers, our Lincoln Park amenities, are in our neighborhood schools, and so on, that we all have similar to each other. And finally, thank you for allowing citizens a voice in this process, and that you, your consultant, your staff will maintain transparency, integrity, and inclusiveness in this process. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, please state your name. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and the consultant today. My name is Shelley Freeland Eddy. I'm an attorney, and I stand here today as the Social Action Chair for Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, Gamma Rho Zeta Chapter, which has its home in Palmetto and Manatee County. We are over 70 members in this community who are members, homeowners, voters, educators, attorneys, doctors, retirees, nonprofit owners, and residents who will be significantly impacted by the decision that you make today. We write with interest, and I rise with interest after hearing your conversation with regard to the process going forward to make sure that the redrawing of these lines will not result in a way that gerrymanders any district, that provides weaker representation to members of legally protected classes and also underserved voters in our county. As mentioned, we request transparency. Transparency from the commission, transparency from the consultant, community education, involvement as the consultant and the commission gathers data on how the new lines should be drawn. The other elephant in the room is how the redistricting lines being redrawn will impact the 2020 census dollars that come to Manatee County. As you are aware, the population for the state has increased by 2.7 million residents, reflects a statewide population growth of 14.6%, and Florida receives $2,350 per Florida resident from the federal government. How will redistricting impact how those 2020 census dollars are allocated and distributed? When will we as voters find out how much money Manatee County got in the 2020 census? How those will be allocated to the census tracts, which are directly related to the redrawing of the lines to the consultant's objectives. We're part of the National Panhellenic Council, and that is a group of 9 historically Black African American sororities and fraternities who all have local chapters in this community with Manatee County voters. So I stand here as one of 9 organizations that has the same concern, and we stand in solidarity that your process be fair, transparent, and not produce the unintended consequences of diluting the African American vote, disenfranchising districts that serve African American communities, and provides timely communication and input from the community in advance of the final vote. There are 4 things that you can do in a special meeting session that alleviates much of the concern that you've heard here today. First, direct your administrator to purchase a GIS license for standalone public use. That can be attached to the website, and it can be tracked, and every commissioner can receive input from any community member that wants to come to the computer database, look at the maps, and provide suggestions. 2, conduct all of your work related to the drawing of the maps in a public setting with opportunity for public input. 3, formalize and publish a process for community input between now and the vote. And 4, direct your county attorney and your administrator to revise your contract with the consultant that includes individual meetings with the consultants in a Zoom or other recorded setting. That way, all of you are protected, there are no sunshine violations, and the public can see what you've talked about. I have copies of the letter from our chapter for the recording clerk and all of the members.
Thank you very much. Who would like to speak next?
Thank you.
I hope my time haven't started yet. Good morning. One thing I need to say, I'm a person.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Betty Sales Rhodes. Okay, one thing about me, when I'm in a meeting, I hate for people to make a joke, because that's like a slap in my face. And I don't like that at all. But one thing I could tell you all, and I hope Mr. Guthrie up there is listening, I hope you all, as a county commission, do not violate the Fair District Clause in Florida Constitution. You all remember, I know a lot of us did, what happened back in 1986. When the Florida Supreme Court overturned the legislation, state senator, and Congress of the district for violating the Florida Fair District requirement. Everybody know about that act. And what I'm trying to say is this right here, it's not a joke. District 2 gonna stay like it is. I don't care, Kevin, your district, Whitmore at large, Cruz at large, Barr and Satcher. And one thing I got to say, we that supposed to believe in the Lord, sometimes you got to watch what you say, because people in here are going to listen at it. And I get very offended. I am black and going to stay black until the day I die. And for ethnic groups, yes, I'm one of them, a minority. And I don't like nobody pinpoint and throw jokes. You heard what your attorneys say. You got to remember about the Voting Rights Act of 1965. See, I was a 10th grader then, and I knew about that. And I graduated in the class of 1967 from Lincoln Memorial High School. Only 2 people, I believe, was on this board, Whitmore, 10 years ago in Bow. When they had the picture up for District 2, we went and looked at the map. Yes, we went right along with it, but I don't know why y'all went and got a consultant. Y'all could have did the same thing. And then another thing, y'all talking about paying him. When you get a consultant, you're supposed to go ahead on and pay him. You don't supposed to pay him every time you meet. You're supposed to pay him a lump sum and be through with it. You understand? And I know the attorney know that. Maybe he'll say something after I get through spending, but you're paying him this. That man want his money all in a lump sum. He working for y'all as a consultant. So pay him like you're supposed to. But like I say, when I'm here in a meeting, don't joke with me. Please do not joke with me, because I am a minority. I am going to stay one. And don't be pinpointed about our district District 2, because that is our district, and District 2 going to stay. Even much we have to take it again, Mr. Guthrie, to another Florida Supreme Court case. That's it. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Good morning. Maybe it's, still morning. My name is Lynette Edwards, longtime educator here in Manatee County, resident of everywhere in Manatee County. I'm here today, though, representing 60 college-educated women of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. When I say we are concerned about redistricting, please don't take it lightly. I've been sent here this morning by our Social Action Commission. I want to reiterate that this is one of the most important issues before you. We encourage you not to rush through this issue, not to overlook people in the process of this decision, and to make sure that you don't assume that everybody has access to technology. We want to make sure that it's a fair process. We want to make sure, most of all, that District 2 doesn't become negatively impacted. We will hit the streets if necessary to ensure that that occurs. I've heard some things here today that I will be reporting back to my chapter on, and I'm sure you'll be receiving a formal letter from our chapter addressing some of those concerns. But to start with, we're not in support of drawing any lines that manipulates or skews District 2 negatively. We want no vote dilution of certain individuals. We want to make sure that you gain input from your constituents by whatever means you choose. We are the people that vote. You need to hear from us. Maps should be displayed. The last time they were at the library. They were everywhere so people could see. It seems like we've made an assumption this time that everybody has access to technology and they're going to go to a website and look at it. We encourage you to rethink that and to make sure that we are including everyone in this process. I thank you for the opportunity to share these brief comments with you. And as I said, you may look for, from our president, Greta Sancho, a letter addressing the issues that I will be sharing with her from this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Mr. Superintendent. And she was my.
All right, it's been a minute since I've done one of these. It has been a while. I'm CJ Garcia. I'm just coming here speaking as a member of the community that is Manatee County. I've heard a lot of dialogue here, a lot of back and forth, which is typical. One thing that did concern me is someone said that this isn't political, and it is. One of the main tenets of politics is that it is all local. I'm a huge believer in local politics because you guys, as well as the school board and city entities, you guys dictate our day-to-day. How much our taxes are, the millage right now is a huge thing, the referendum, everything is local. You know, federal government or whatever, every now and then they want to stick a mandate here or there, but for the most part, the county, the cities, the school board, you guys decide what goes on. So I wanted to make sure that me as someone who does this sometimes, or most of the time for a living, it is political, very much so. But that being said, I believe that the reason that the lines are drawn on population, and then the federal government said, but you also have to take into account political and ethnicities and different type of subgroups, is because there are groups who cannot vote. Someone mentioned prison populations or jail populations. There are groups that have no voice and no representation, and I come from that. My mother became a U.S. citizen today, and she'll be able to vote in the next election, and I'm very proud of that. So for me, it's important. My father's never missed an election since he became a citizen in the 80s. That was thanks to what Reagan did way back when. So there's to me, it's not red and blue, black and white, whatever you want to call it. It's about being fair. And fairness is it's a lot of common sense. Every single one of the individual districts is composed of all types of people. I have a business, or multiple now, that run across the entire county and the Tampa Bay area. So all of this affects me as a person, as an entrepreneur, as someone who pays taxes and supports the local economy. So I just ask that on top of all the dialogue, I grew up a pastor's kid, and I was a youth pastor for many years. So some of the things I hear are concerning. They are. Because as someone who believes that you have to do right by my neighbor, by others, and treat others, there's a golden rule, but I like the platinum rule. The platinum rule is treat others the way that they want to be treated. Because if I treat you the way I like to be treated, I'm a masochist. So you might not like to get slapped around a little bit. You might be, it's true. So it's important for us to understand that going forward as a community, and the transparency is something that has to be done. And as a consultant, I feel for you, sir, because you're going to be taking a lot of the heat for what the board ends up deciding. But I think if you use the numbers and you go by the data, they don't lie. And just please use some common sense. That is my comment. Thank you.
Please give your mother congratulations for all of this. Thank you. Next, any forward and speak?
Hey, greetings, Rodney Jones here. Kind of want to echo what everyone else has said here. I've been to a lot of kind of the front line of a lot of things that are going on in the county, and our concern is what you've seen in the last probably year or so, and a year and a half, that the constituents are getting quite restless with the lack of trust that we have in our elected officials, and I think that's what the largest concern is. Me being born and raised in District 2 is very important, especially for our minority community. It's all we have. In a day and age where racism and things are coming to another pinnacle in this country, and then with a vicious 2024 election coming up and seeing what the 2020 did to the country, we're very apprehensive about our position. Not the position for me. At 50, I'll be a senior citizen. I'll be 55 in January, but for my 9-month-old daughter that I have, and for my grandchildren and my children. I was really concerned with some of Mrs. Thatcher's statement, because you seem to have somewhat of a pie, not an attack on you at all, just an opinion on what you said, that you had somewhat of a pie in the sky concept of the United States. If there was no need, if there was not a need for change, there would be no need for the 1965 Voters Act. There would be no need for civil rights legislation that came along after the Constitution was constructed by your forefathers, not mine. Because at the time the Constitution was written, I was considered subhuman. I was not considered a man. I was property. That is the concern. And so we can't lose sight of that. At any time, we cannot lose sight of that. And so with the behavior that I've seen, not only at the school district, to Cesar's point, not only at the school district and here at the county and in the municipality of Palmetto and some of our municipalities, I think everybody's concerned. And so you'll understand our concern too. So to go along with my group here, even though we've all got different missions and different views, I think we stand in solidarity today, that we're not going to take anything laying down. If we have to take to the streets, I'll be glad to take to the streets. If we have to make this a litigious situation, we certainly will. So I just request that you do a better job of this than we've seen you do in some of the other important decisions that will impact my daughter's life and our children's lives, that you handle this give it much more stewardship and ownership than you have in the past. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Charles B. Smith, candidate for Manatee County Commission District 2. Would like to bring to your attention that the fact that about 4 days ago, I received a text message with a map with the recommendation of map D for the entire Manatee County district drawing process was sent to me. I was very disturbed about that. That did not come from any county commissioners. It's a recommendation from staff for map D. Whatever that map is, I'm not sure if it's good or bad. To your neophytes, you new county commissioners, let me give you a word of wisdom. Attorney Clegg is one of the best attorneys in the state of Florida. I disagree with him as a county commissioner, but he mostly was right. Sometimes you let your passion get in the way of progress. He gave you a way out. He said it's confidential when you talk to him. It's protected, but not with Dr. Hope and Mr. Guthrie. Mr. Guthrie may be a wonderful man, but you must understand that also he was part of the Florida Supreme Court. They overturned what took place in the state of Florida, and they had to draw the maps in the state of Florida, and he did work on that, and he testified on that. They also found out that evidence was hidden and everything else. So do your research. The county attorney should have more involvement. The county administrator has no business doing what he is doing. You are our leaders. Every last one of you is my county commissioner. We depend on you to do the right thing. The large county commission has to be the people in this seat that makes the final decision when you got animosity among each other, and it is politically. Now, Attorney Clay mentioned about the district and what it must do. The statute is clear. I echo everything that was said. But make no mistake about it. The first county commissioner was a Republican for District 2. Kent Chatelain. Kent Chatelain was drawn out of his district, and he served as the District 2 county commissioner for a year and a half. Gwendolyn Brown became the first black county commissioner in the history of this county. She had ran 4 times, and she lost. This district was created because legislation and federal statutes and federal laws and lawsuits that were going nationwide that you were going to lose if you did not draw this district. District 2 is a protected district. You cannot get 10,000 Christian brothers and sisters, I'm ordained, white, and put them in District 2 and say, there go your district. District 2 does not have to be the size of any other district, practically. That's your protection. And my last word to you, commissioners, love all of you. But let me say this to you. The last thing we need is a federal judge, and there's talk of it already, of drawing the districts in Manatee County. Because that federal judge is not going to just draw District 2. He's going to draw all 5 districts. And I echo what Mr. Servia has said. Transparency and more meetings where you can take action is more proper. God bless all of you.
Good to see you, sir. Else want to come forward? All right, I'll close public comment. Ms. Rhodes, I just want you to know that I've only been here. I've only been here 9 years. I wasn't here when the redistricting was done. Yeah, so, sorry. I just wanted to make sure you knew. I'm coming. All right, thank you. Any phone calls?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have 4 phone calls.
Go ahead.
Caller 377, press *6 and state your name for the record, please.
My name is Ruth Heronshar. I reside in District 1, and my comments are related to the ESRI redistricting software and transparency in the use of that software. I have 37 years of experience in information technology as a professional and as an executive and as a business owner. And I commend your decision to use the ESRI redistricting software. ESRI has a long and excellent reputation. My concern as a citizen with extensive IT experience is I know how a computer program can be manipulated via the inputs that are dictated to it, and commend the positions of Commissioners Servia and Bellamy, especially that there needs to be transparency with the public. Specifically, there's integrity tests within the software. What are those integrity tests, and what are the results that are going to be part of the published maps? The consultant talked about additional considerations being given to him. The public needs to know what those additional criteria are. And so in the industry, there's a well-known and accurate saying with computer programs that garbage in, garbage out. What will you be doing as our elected commissioners to ensure that gerrymandered garbage does not come out of this software and services process? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Caller 746, press star 6, and please state your name for the record. Caller 746.
All right, good morning, good afternoon. You hear me? This is Keenan Wooten, representative of the NAACP as the Political Action Chair and a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, which was founded on the campus of University of Indiana in Bloomington, Indiana, and the fundamental purpose of achievement. We have a stake in this, our beloved community center, which is under our Project Guide Right program, sits in the heart of District 2, and named after our beloved own Buffalo soldier, Steve Lewis, who's turning 100 years old in 2022. We enjoy our community, and while enjoying our community, we sit around and reminisce with our other Divine Nine members about our ancestors and the struggles of the past. We stand on their shoulders in our community in District 2. It's like our own community with historical churches and parks, and historical figures in our community. Figures such as Seymour Sales, Steve Lewis, Louise R. Johnson, and our own coach Eddie Shannon, and so many more. In this process, we demand transparency and an equitable and fair approach. We demand you all learn about the history of District 2. I hear some commissioners, "Oh, I wasn't around," or "I wasn't there," but we challenge you to learn about the history of how we got here in District 2 and the sacrifices that were made on a federal level, state and local level, so that representation can be intact. So I'm just here representing those organizations that enjoy District 2, and we definitely want transparency and an equitable approach as we look into the future of our redistricting situation here in Manatee County. And with that being said, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next caller.
Yes, caller 377, press star 6, and please state your name for the record, please.
I have already spoken. I have already spoken.
Next caller, ma'am.
Caller 441, press star 6, and please state your name for the record.
I've already spoken.
Oh. Okay. That's all the callers we have, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Close public comment. It is 11:57. Anything else, Dr. Hopes?
No, Madam Chair.
Mr. Guthrie, anything you'd like to add before we close?
No, thank you for the opportunity to work with you on this important project, and I look forward to meeting you soon.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you, sir. All right, wait a minute. We've got some commissioners.
I was waiting not till
Commissioner
I
Whitmore.
don't need the consultant unless somebody else does.
Commissioner, can
you
somebody?
do? Okay. Well, I'll wait till after the consultant because it's not about, I don't need the consultant if we're paying them. It's comments.
a
It's
little
commissioner
late. Okay.
comments.
Commissioner Van Alstenbridge, did you have
Thank you,
something
Madam.
for the consultant?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So I heard some things from the public comment that raised some questions. So my question for Mr. Guthrie is, I thought that the population of the districts was paramount, but I heard from public comment, which may or may not be correct. I'm just wanting you to address it. Is it, basically, as I'm looking at it, if you're going to have to add people to some of the districts, 3 of the districts, ultimately that's going to dilute those districts, right? So my question is, does District 2 have to be the same population or within the 10% margin or not?
It does.
Well, the state law may control it is my question.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So that is a legal question. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding of the law is that there's that provision applies to all districts. So there's not a carve out for underpopulating minority districts.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Bellamy.
Is anybody before me?
No, sir.
Mr. Clegg, can I get you to respond on that so we can make sure all of us on the same page from your legal?
I would agree with the consultant. I'm not aware of any case that says that we can avoid the requirements of the Florida Constitution because of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. But I also would have to remind the board that the Florida Constitution doesn't say you have to get to a zero correlation between districts. You have some room there to, maybe do less in District 2 and more in other districts if that's what you need to do in order to comply with the Voting Rights Act. I think some judgments are going to have to be made about that. And also if you are going to expand District 2, in which direction you're going to expand it. Because there are different demographics and different directions around the boundaries of District 2. Those things have to be considered, as the consultant said earlier. You do have to consider the requirements of the Act, but there isn't a bright line rule one way or the other. I'm not aware of case law that supports the position you heard from the public comment. If they have some, I'm certainly willing to look at it.
So, if I may, so the words, I wrote them down too. It got my attention as well. Protected district. There is no quote unquote protected district. I'm a little.
Well, I don't think I want to get into the semantics of what that could mean. Different people can mean different things by that, but there's certainly an issue with the Voting Rights Act with District 2. There's no question about that. There's no question about that because of its history and its demographics.
All right, Commissioner Whitmore, did you? Wait, because it's not about this. Okay. No, but he'll go ahead. Commissioner Satcher. You have something you want to add, sir?
You mentioned no bright line. So there's not case law that there's a percentage that triggers. I thought that I'd heard that there was.
So, Commissioner Satcher, the cases on these issues are fact-driven, and they vary from case to case. I really think at this point, any further discussion about the potential for litigation ought to be in one-on-one discussions between the county attorney and each of you individually.
Probably the best. Perhaps you need to set up a meeting.
Well, I'll just say that I absolutely agree, with that. And I think it's very interesting the way discussion has gone to jump on that bandwagon as if that's where we're headed, or that, when we haven't even seen a proposed map, and yet we're already saying we need, work session day after day and everything. You can't have a conversation with this person. I just find it interesting how we always jump to the gun before we have seen anything to assume the worst. So I'm not assuming the worst. This has been brought up by people that have been here or that are, in the room or were in the room. I disagree, and I said the way I try to live my life and do things is, anyway, I agree with trying to do things fairly as possible.
Madam Chair, could I just
Yes,
make one
please.
quick comment about that? So it's my job to, point out these legal issues to the board, and that's what I did today. And I do want to make it clear that neither Dr. Hopes nor anyone on his staff nor any commissioner has suggested to me that they have an interest in doing something to negatively impact District 2. I have not had any dialogue from my client in any way, shape, or form to that effect. This is a natural point of discussion that's going to come up when you're doing redistricting, and you do have an historically minority district, but that doesn't mean that there's something terrible going on. It just means we have to talk about it. It's part of the process. I hope that helps, Commissioner Satcher, to address your concerns.
Any other commissioners on this topic with the consultant? Commissioner Bellamy.
Yeah, I just think the difference in respect and appreciation to everybody that spoke, the difference is we're trying to be proactive instead of reactive. And that's the reality. That's the reality of it. We want to put this information out there and make sure that District 2 stand and as we go through this process. So the communication is to make sure we don't, or the public don't have to take certain steps. So they're just being proactive instead of reactive.
Okay, then I think we're going to move to almost ending this thing. Commissioner Whitmore.
Thank you. Are we done?
Mr. Guthrie, they're wondering if you have anything else, sir, you'd like to say.
No, look forward to seeing you at your next special meeting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Whitmore.
Yeah, and I just want to, I usually don't, but, I'm sure it was just a joke, but this Democrat and Republican thing, I don't think it was meant. I thought it was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't, but, I've been a Republican probably longer than Mr. Satcher's been alive. So I don't even know how old you are.
Want me to tell him?
Probably under 40, right?
Tell him to do it? Okay.
Okay, maybe just. Yeah. But anyway, so
I'm
I
the
just
oldest.
wanted to clarify that, yeah. And also,
Of course, Carol, you're right there with
another
me.
topic, Kevin, did you take over, were you looking at the foster kid situation? Is that what you were interested in?
Yes, so I actually requested a workshop
Okay.
so that all of us could sort of get into the weeds on the state of the foster care system in Manatee County.
All right. If we could add that, Mr. County Administrator, there is a program that John Horn found, with his early learning, kids reading, et cetera. He found a program that if you're in the system, your college tuition and fees are paid.
100%.
And only
free.
2% of the kids in the foster program have utilized it. So he asked, and it's a great idea, that we push that when we have our work session, and let's get a campaign out and see exactly what they pay.
Correct, and actually, it's less than 1% that complete their four-year degree, like
Okay,
kids that go
there
all the
you
way through
go.
the foster care system.
And I had never heard of that. So also, I got a call last night. We had a housing authority meeting yesterday. Is that what it is called? Affordable Housing Advisory Board. And I got a complaint regarding Mr. Gibolina being insulting and rude to our employees. I said I was going to bring it up. I know he's not on the Brainton Housing Authority now. And there was reasons that he wasn't, and the mayor didn't appoint him, correct? Yep. You can't be talking to our employees disrespectfully. I know you were there. I don't know if he was, but when I have somebody on the board call and say they're not going to put up with it anymore. And I remember at one point in our healthcare advisory board, Joshua Barnett was treated terrible by some of our advisory board members. He quit going. So I think somebody needs to address this. We appointed him, but he has to be respectful, just like I didn't support Bauer when he came before the, to be on the planning commission. I'm not going to tolerate people being rude to our employees. So I don't know how we handle that, if we need to reconsider what we did or warn them that if it happens again, I'm going to make a motion to find somebody else. I like Glenn. He makes me debate and argue, but you can't treat employees like this. These people are making a living going home to their families. I don't appreciate that.
Commissioner Survey, is this on Commissioner Whitmore's?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have a comment on that, and then I had another comment under Commissioner comments.
Okay,
What would you like for me to
Commissioner
do?
comments, if you could hold off on that, because I got
Okay,
Commissioner,
well, I do
think,
have a
wants to
comment
on her as
this. Yes. And so I was at the meeting yesterday afternoon, and, you know, I like Glenn Gibolina personally, and I try to encourage the good things that he does, but I have witnessed for a long time a very caustic tone towards staff, and I don't like it. It's not appropriate. But I will say, in answer to your question, what can we do? Well, you have to appoint people that are appropriate for each of the committees, because these are board appointments. So, thank you.
Commissioner Vanna, is this in reference?
It is, because I had heard from someone who was at the meeting as well, consistent with what Commissioner Whitmore said, and I was actually going to bring it to the attention of Dr. Hopes, but, you know, should we either direct the chair, I can't, it's a workshop, but at our land use meeting, we could direct the chair to pen a letter to Mr. Gibolina, specifically citing, you know, our concerns. Is that something anyone's open
Not
to?
do that in a workshop.
I said at our land use meeting on Thursday.
I'm sorry.
We have a land use meeting on Thursday. We have a land use meeting on Thursday. So I was just wondering if I get bobbing heads, you know, during the workshop, then maybe that could be placed on the agenda, or maybe I could just do it, or Commissioner Whitmore could do it in Commissioner comments, or maybe Commissioner Servia, since she was there, could make the motion. So anyway, thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm next on the board, and then Commissioner Servia. Going back to this workshop, that's where mine are. In reference to, someone brought up in public comment about having the maps out in the libraries and so forth. I think that's a great idea, because not everybody does have computers. So any maps that come in, you'll take care of that? Okay. And I'm not looking to revise the contract at this point, so that's really all I wanted to make sure on. Okay, Commissioner Servia, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for the suggestion or underscoring the library comment, because it is a good one, and that is where our community congregates, and it just makes sense to do that there. As for underscoring, I do want to go back to the public comment that we heard about board decorum. And it is something that has bothered me for quite a while. And I like all of you very much, and I love to have a good time, you know, at the ballpark, over a cocktail, those types of things. But the decorum in these meetings, I would ask, please, that we refrain from jokes and laughing and nudging and all of those things that I don't feel are appropriate. It should be a very, very serious meeting when we are together doing business. So those are my comments. Thank you.
A little humor never hurts. Sometimes it's necessary. Any other comments, commissioners, that you'd like to make in this before we recess? We're adjourned, not recess. Nothing? All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, I couldn't lower the